Listen to the click of a camera that would later speak louder than 1,000 witnesses. It was late March in Saskatoon. Two young women, laughter in their throats, their phones out, the city's neon stretching their shadows across the sidewalk. They posed for a picture, a quick smile, a tilt of the head, the faint smell of cigarette smoke in the air. A flash, freezing everything in brutal honesty for a fraction of a second. That single frame, meant only for friends, would live forever in the glow of a phone screen. Hours later, one of those young women would be gone, her body left on the side of a rural road just outside the city. Cause of death, strangulation. A belt found nearby, discarded in the dirt. For almost 2 years, her death remained an open wound. Detectives chased whispers that went nowhere. Friends gave stories that bent and broke under pressure. Leads died in the cold light of morning. And then, someone opened a social media profile and pressed play on the past. There it was, in the background of a smiling selfie, a belt. Not just any belt, but the same make, the same wear, the same one lying beside her body on that road. That image refused to stay silent. The belt in a photo. The timestamp on a phone. Small things, until they aren't. Piece by piece, investigators pulled apart the night, matching lies to minutes, excuses to evidence. And when the woman in the photo was confronted, her story changed. She admitted to an argument. Admitted the belt was hers. Admitted she had wrapped it around her friend's neck. The smiling face in the picture became the face of the killer. Think about that. A curated moment of friendship, meant to be shared, became the key that unlocked a murder case. A casual post, a flash of vanity, became the most honest thing anyone had seen from that night. And yet, the photograph didn't just reveal the truth, it forced the world to look at it. Tonight, we return to that frame, pixel by pixel, timestamp by timestamp, to uncover how a smiling snapshot solved a murder, who it really exposed, and what it tells us about the fragile line between an ordinary night out, and a final moment you can never take back. Keep your eyes on the screen. The camera never blinks. This isn't just the story of a murder, it's the story of how an image, a simple, unassuming photograph, shattered the walls of a lie that could have lasted forever. It began like so many nights do. Two friends. A few drinks. Music spilling out of crowded rooms and onto dimly lit streets. Laughter that felt easy. And a quick, almost careless moment to capture it, a selfie for the feed, one among thousands. In the photo, nothing seemed out of place. Two faces pressed close. The flash washing everything in a pale glow. A faint blur in the background where the night air swirled. Most people would have kept scrolling. And yet, hidden in the pixels, in the shadows most eyes would overlook, was something no one was supposed to see. Hours later, one of those smiles would vanish forever. And in the days that followed, the image, the same one posted for friends and strangers to double tap and move on, would resurface, not in a feed, but in a police investigation room. Because somewhere in that frozen second, the truth was staring right back. The weapon. The clue. The silent witness that couldn't be erased. How does a single image, a single click, undo the perfect cover story? What happened in the hours before that shutter blinked? And why, when the truth finally came into focus, did it feel like the killer had been smiling all along? Stay with me, because once you see it, you'll never look at a selfie the same way again. Before there was a crime scene, before there was a headline, there were just two young women. Cheyenne and Brittney. Friends, at least, that's how it looked from the outside. They'd known each other for years. Shared drinks, inside jokes, and the kind of personal stories you only tell someone you trust. But friendships can be complicated. They can hold more than laughter, they can hide resentment, jealousy, and things neither side will ever admit out loud. On that cold night, the city lights were blurred halos in the distance. Somewhere downtown, music thumped behind club doors, laughter echoed off the wet pavement, and a taxi's headlights cut through the dark. Cheyenne and Brittney were together again, smiling for photos, laughing for strangers, looking like they didn't have a care in the world. The truth was different. Underneath those smiles, tension simmered. An argument had already sparked earlier in the evening, about money, about trust, about a betrayal neither would forget. Words had been exchanged that couldn't be taken back. But no one else could see that. On social media, they were just out having fun. Somewhere between the drinks and the late-night walk, a phone came out. A selfie was taken, one arm extended, both faces lit up by the flash. And just beyond the edge of that perfect smile, was something else. A strip of dark leather. A glint of metal. Hours later, the streets would be silent. And one of those women would be lying lifeless, while the other walked away with a story she thought would protect her. But the photo would tell a different story. It would sit quietly online, waiting to be noticed, not by friends, but by detectives who would soon be asking a far more dangerous question. Was this a night gone wrong, or had it been planned all along? The hours after that photo was taken are a blur, not just for those who lived through them, but for the investigators who would spend weeks trying to untangle the lies from the truth. It began with a cab ride. The streets outside were quiet, the city slipping deeper into the early morning hours. Inside the car, Cheyenne sat in the back seat with Brittney. They weren't laughing now. The words were sharper. The smiles were gone. And the driver, he would later recall the tension, the way they avoided looking at each other. When they reached their stop, the driver watched them step into the dark, their silhouettes shrinking under the orange glow of a street lamp. That was the last time anyone outside their small circle would see them together. What happened next, police would later piece together through fragments. Witness statements. Security footage. And eventually, that photograph. Somewhere in the shadows of that early morning, a confrontation turned into violence. The argument reignited, louder, harsher, impossible to take back. A belt was pulled, the same one barely visible in the background of the selfie, and within minutes, Brittney lay still. The life drained from her eyes before she could call for help. Cheyenne stood over her, breathing hard. The silence of the street was deafening. Panic set in. She had to think, quickly. There was no plan for this moment, no script to follow. She left the scene, spinning a story in her mind, one she thought would hold up if the police came asking. But there was one thing she didn't know, the murder weapon had already been photographed, hours before she ever used it. That single frame, already uploaded, already seen, was waiting to betray her. When Brittney's body was found, the scene was almost too quiet. There were no witnesses. No signs of a break-in. No frantic calls to police. Whoever had been with her last, had vanished. Investigators started with the basics, family, friends, the last people to see her alive. Cheyenne's name came up quickly. They had been seen together that night. But when police found her, she was calm. Too calm. She said she hadn't seen Brittney in hours. She insisted she had nothing to do with what happened. At first, there wasn't enough to prove otherwise. The trail felt cold. But then, a detective scrolling through social media noticed something strange. On Brittney's own Instagram account, there was a fresh post from just the night before, a selfie of the two friends, cheek to cheek, taken in the glow of a club's neon lights. The caption seemed harmless. The smiles looked forced, but nothing unusual. Until the detective looked closer. Down at the bottom corner of the frame, almost hidden in shadow, was a belt. Thick, dark leather. The same kind that matched the marks on Brittney's neck. It was the kind of detail most people would scroll past without noticing. But to a trained investigator, it was a thread. And if they pulled it, the whole story might unravel. They enlarged the image, zooming in until the pixels bled together. They compared the pattern of the stitching, the worn edges, the unique buckle shape, and then compared it to what they found in Cheyenne's apartment. It was a match. That Instagram selfie, a casual, spur-of-the-moment photo, had just become the most damning piece of evidence in the case. Suddenly, everything shifted. The detectives now had a timeline, a visual record placing the weapon in the killer's possession before the murder. And Cheyenne had no idea she had handed them her own confession, in plain sight. Cheyenne sat in the small, windowless room, her hands resting flat on the cold metal table. She thought she had been called in for another round of questions, just routine, nothing she couldn't handle. But this time, the detectives weren't circling. They were moving in. The lead investigator placed a single sheet of paper on the table, face down. And then, slowly, with deliberate precision, he turned it over. It was the selfie. "Do you recognize this?" he asked. Cheyenne looked at it, blinked, forced a small laugh. "Yeah, we took that last night." The detective leaned in. "Look closer." Her eyes darted to the lower corner. The belt. Faint, but unmistakable, now circled in red ink. "That's your belt, isn't it?" She shifted in her seat. "I have a belt like that, but so do a lot of people." The detective didn't move. Didn't blink. "Except this one has the same frayed stitching, the same crease in the leather, right where you pull it the tightest. And we found it in your apartment. With traces of her DNA." Silence. Cheyenne's fingers began to drum on the table. Her gaze fell to the photo again. She seemed smaller now, like the air had been pulled out of her. "You didn't mean for it to go that far, did you?" the detective pressed. "But it did. And now she's gone." She shook her head, tears welling up, though whether they were for Brittney or for herself, no one could tell. The walls of her story were closing in, and the very image she thought was harmless had become the proof that would destroy her defense. The decision came quickly. After hours of questioning, Cheyenne was formally placed under arrest for the murder of Brittney Gargol. The moment the cuffs clicked shut, the calm mask she had worn for days cracked. Her voice, once casual and controlled, now shook with something between fear and disbelief. She whispered, "It's not what you think." But there was no mistaking the evidence. Detectives walked her through the narrow hallway, their boots echoing against the tiled floor. Behind them, in that interrogation room, the selfie still sat on the table, the image that had done what no eyewitness or confession could. Outside, the air was biting. Squad car lights pulsed against the concrete, painting her in alternating flashes of red and blue. Reporters weren't there yet, but they would be. By the next morning, the story had gone public. "Murder weapon spotted in Facebook photo," the headlines read. The selfie spread across news sites, then social media, shared thousands of times. People zoomed in on the belt, dissected her smile, argued over whether guilt could be read in her eyes. For Brittney's family, the photo was unbearable to look at. But for investigators, it was the anchor that held the case together. And for Cheyenne, it was a reminder that a single snapshot can freeze more than a moment, it can trap you in it, forever. By the time the trial began, the case had already been tried in the court of public opinion. The selfie had gone viral. Not just across Canada, but across the world. People weren't just reading about Brittney Gargol's death, they were seeing the moment before it happened. In the courtroom, the air was heavy, almost oppressive. Wooden benches creaked as people leaned forward, straining to catch every word. Brittney's family sat in the first row, their hands clasped tightly, faces drawn with grief. Across the aisle, Cheyenne sat beside her defense lawyer. She looked smaller than the headlines had painted her. Her hair tied back, her eyes darting between the judge and the floor. When the prosecution displayed the selfie on the large screen, the room went still. There it was. Brittney, smiling. Cheyenne, beside her. And that belt, the very belt later found next to Brittney's body. Jurors stared. Some glanced away. Others kept their eyes fixed, as though the photo might reveal more if they looked long enough. The prosecutor's voice cut through the silence. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, sometimes, the truth stares right at us. We just have to be willing to see it." The defense argued that the photo proved nothing. That the belt could have belonged to anyone. That it was a coincidence, not a confession. But the weight of the image was hard to shake. Every witness statement, every forensic report, all of it circled back to that single moment captured in pixels. Outside the courthouse, crowds gathered. Some carried signs demanding justice for Brittney. Others shouted about privacy, about how a photograph shouldn't decide a person's fate. News vans lined the street. Cameras clicked as Cheyenne was escorted in and out each day. She never looked up, never spoke to reporters. Inside, the trial moved quickly. The prosecution's timeline was sharp, the evidence damning. And when the verdict came, the room erupted. Cheyenne Rose Antoine was found guilty. Brittney's family wept. Some members of the public nodded in approval, others stood frozen. The judge's final words echoed long after the gavel fell. A single photograph changed everything. It showed us not just where you were, but what you had done. And with that, the case that had started with a night out and a social media post ended with a sentence that would follow Cheyenne for the rest of her life. After the trial ended, the courthouse doors closed, but the story didn't. Cheyenne Rose Antoine was led away to begin her sentence. The sound of her footsteps on that cold, tiled hallway echoed like a final reminder: once you step inside the justice system, you don't walk out the same. For Brittney Gargol's family, there was no real victory. A guilty verdict didn't bring her back. The nights were still empty, the laughter still gone. Her mother would later say that she still checks her phone sometimes, half expecting a text from Brittney, knowing it will never come. The selfie, that frozen moment, became something more than a piece of evidence. It became a symbol. Journalists used it to warn about oversharing on social media. Police officers held it up during presentations about digital footprints. In classrooms, it was shown to teenagers who didn't yet understand how a single image could change their lives. And for those who knew Brittney, it was unbearable to see. They didn't see evidence. They saw the last time she was alive. As the years passed, the case began showing up in documentaries, crime podcasts, and YouTube breakdowns. People analyzed the smile, the tilt of Cheyenne's head, the position of the belt. Every detail became part of the public's narrative. But here's the truth: no one will ever really know what was going through their minds in that moment. Only two people were in that photo. And one of them is gone forever. The belt, the trial, the headlines, they all became part of a story that started with two friends going out for the night and ended in tragedy. Today, Brittney's friends and family keep her memory alive in quieter ways, through small gatherings, through shared memories, through the stories they tell about her. And that selfie? It still exists. It's still online, still a click away. But for those who understand the story behind it, it's no longer just a picture. It's a warning. A reminder. And for Brittney Gargol's loved ones, it will always be the moment before everything changed. In the end, this story is not just about a crime. It's about how quickly a normal night can turn into a tragedy. How a single image, meant to be a memory, can become the loudest voice in the courtroom. Brittney Gargol was 18 years old. She had dreams, friends, a future. But now, she is frozen in time, smiling in a photo taken just hours before her life was taken. Her story is a reminder that behind every headline is a real person, with people who love them, people who will never stop grieving them. And for all of us, it's a warning about the choices we make, the people we trust, and the way we share our lives online. Look at the people in your own photos. Your friends. Your family. The ones you think will be there tomorrow. Because tomorrow is never promised. Would you have seen it? Would you have known something was wrong? Or, like so many others, would you have scrolled past? Let us never forget her name. Brittney Gargol. If you or someone you know is in danger, speak up. Call someone. Ask for help. Don't wait for a tragedy to tell you something was wrong all along.